Hello, how are you? And I want to welcome you to our presentation. And today, or rather, I should say, this particular presentation draws from Charlotte Wood's The Self and Its Problems, the Blavatsky Lecture. Now, Blavatsky, better known as Helena Blavatsky, is or was the founder of the Theosophical Society. And what theosophy is actually about is, well, theosophy itself is a philosophy or any number of philosophies that maintain a knowledge of God, or rather, I should say, that suggest that a knowledge of God may be achieved through spiritual ecstasy or directed intuition or special individual relations, meaning relations that move you into that receptive state. And it was especially considered to be a movement founded in 1875 as the Theosophical Society by Helena Blavatsky and Henry Steele Olcott. Now, to my knowledge, the Theosophical Society is still in existence. And as I said, we're going to draw from that particular writing. And this chapter here is titled The Problem of the Self in Theosophic Mysticism, or the self in the religious experience. So the author tells us that spirit and matter, a pair of independent realities, mutually exclusive of each other, yet mutually dependent upon each other, are eternally distinct in nature and function, yet in action eternally united. So we have spirit and we have matter. Now, this is very similar to a presentation I did earlier, which touched on the Kabbalah and the Zohar. So, in this particular one, we have spirit and matter, exclusive yet mutually dependent upon each other. So, this gives us some questions here. For instance, is spirit and matter independent realities, or rather, are they independent realities? Spirit separate from matter? Or are they simply aspects of a single reality, a whole, viewed from different angles? Could be. This probably falls into today's quantum mechanics idea of multiverses. However, they are also said to be unable to communicate with each other, meaning these multiverses, universes within universes within universes, different versions of one universe. And in that instance, there would be no original universe or ending universe. Again, another display of alpha and omega, continuous. And these theories are theoretical only. However, there are several compelling theories that explore the connection between black holes and white holes. Now, this is in the realm of quantum philosophy. And some of these theories challenge our conventional understanding of space-time, gravity, and information. Information in particular. That's what we are concerned with. Information. So we have several theories here. One of them is the black hole, white hole duality, also known as time reversal symmetry. In general, what they are saying is that a white hole is the opposite of a black hole. Now, a black hole draws material in, whereas a white hole spews it out. So, in theory, the black hole is at one end and the white hole is at the other end. They are connected. One draws in material, omega, because that's the end. We see that as the end. Its gravity is so strong that it crushes everything. And in the opposite end, we have alpha, which spews out material. And some physicists suggest that black holes and white holes are, as I said, two sides of the same space-time geometry. And the idea, again, these are unprovable theories. It's mostly mathematical, but it suggests that what enters the black hole could emerge theoretically from a white hole in another region of space-time. Remember Stargate, where they would enter into a manufactured wormhole if it got too close to a sun, gravity, or a black hole, gravity again. You could come out or exit the wormhole in a different time zone, a different time period, or a different location in the universe, again, in a different time, into a planet's past or future. It makes things interesting. And then there is what is called the quantum bounce theory, or loop quantum gravity. And this theory suggests that instead of collapsing into a singularity, a black hole collapsing into a singularity, the matter that is inside undergoes a quantum bounce and re-expands as a white hole. Well, consider this. You have the black hole sucking everything in, and then you have a point, a transition point, and once it moves through that transition point, everything is spewed out. So you could view this as you have death, and then you have life. Let's look at this differently. That was a poor example. Let's consider an example that we might be more familiar with. All right. So we have birth, which it would be the white hole. Birth. We emerge from the womb. We go through life. That is the point in between. We emerge, go through life, and then as we approach death, the black hole, another point, we move into the death experience, and then we are in a different reality. We could call it the spirit reality, which is something we're familiar with, heaven, however you want to put it. But we are in that reality. We are born into that reality, and then we exist, and then we are born into this reality. We die in the one reality and are born into another reality. Points of transition. Alpha and omega. What a coincidence. So this explanation continues with its part of the way they put it, I should say, is that matter inside a black hole undergoes a quantum bounce, shrinks, and then expands again. That sounds familiar. It's like a cycle. end, beginning, alpha, omega, alpha, omega, alpha, omega. See what I mean? Beginning within the end within the beginning. It can be confusing. So anyway, it's part of what they call a loop quantum gravity, which replaces the idea of a singularity with a finite structure, meaning once you go in, that's it, it's all over with. But when you consider the theory of the conservation of energy, which tells us that you cannot destroy energy. Energy can only be transformed. So if you consider that, you cannot, material matter cannot be sucked into a black hole and go nowhere or have nothing happen to it. Something has to happen to it. And from that, with this quantum bounce, it immediately expands. Sounds like the Big Bang Theory. And as it expands, everything is spewed out. So this, and they say this can resolve or could resolve the information paradox, allowing information to escape through the white hole. See, again, matter comes in, is transformed, and then is spewed out. This is all beginning to sound familiar. And then we have what is called the unimodular gravity and singularity resolution. And they tell us that a recent study from the University of Sheffield explores the unimodular gravity as a variant of general relativity, treating the cosmological constant as fixed. So let's do a quick search and see what is the cosmological constant. Now you can do these short, quick searches through your AI companion on your browser. But I have to tell you, when you input your questions, it's always good to include not to use Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is an open source of information, which anybody can change. So the cosmological constant, denoted as the Greek letter lambda, or an inverted V, is a term in Einstein's field of equations of general relativity that represents a uniform energy density filling space. And he introduced this in 1917 to allow for a static universe, meaning a universe that does not expand. But this was before the universe was discovered to expand. And it represents vacuum energy, dark energy, repulsive gravity. Now, vacuum energy is the energy of empty space. Even in the absence of matter, space still contains energy. Dark energy in today's cosmology is the simplest form of a mysterious force, or rather, I should say, dark energy in today's cosmology is a mysterious force that causes the accelerated expansion of the universe. Unseen, unknown, and then repulsive gravity, unlike normal matter, which attracts the cosmological constant, acts as a repulsive force. So instead of drawing things in, everything is pushed out. So you have dark energy, which moves things, pushes things. Well, how interesting. Dark energy pushes things out, and so does repulsive gravity. It pushes things out. And then there is the cosmological constant problem, where the quantum field theory predicts a vacuum energy density that is 120 orders of magnitude larger than what we observe, what we can see. And this discrepancy is one of the biggest unsolved problems in physics. So that's just something brief. And let's come back to unimodular gravity and singularity resolution. So we looked at the idea of it being a variant of general relativity that treats the cosmological constant as fixed. So we've dealt with that. Now, researchers argue that the singularity at the heart of a black hole might not be an endpoint, but a gateway to a white hole or even a new universe. Well, now we come all the way back to the beginning here with the black hole, white hole duality or time reversed symmetry, which is posited as a gateway to a white hole or a potential new universe. And the theory could reshape our understanding of time, dark energy, and the structure of space and time itself. So you could say that this is a quantum explanation of the famous line in the Bible, in the Old Testament, where God says, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Well, now we have three theories here which actually fold into a single theory because they're all essentially variations of the black hole, white hole duality idea here. So the author goes on to tell us that the world, in spite of difference, is one world pervaded by a common nature arising from a common source. And man, though a union of spirit and matter, is in his totality one. So now I agree with the world being pervaded by a common nature arising from a common source. Now, most people will call this God, the divine. As we looked at the theories earlier, this could be a reference to, or the common nature could actually be that transition point within the black hole, the corridor system of the black hole and the white hole, where everything is converted, polarized. So, and I disagree with the idea of man being a union of matter and spirit. Because if this is the case, then all creatures actively striving for survival must also contain a spirit. Now, some of you may be of this belief, particularly pet owners. However, if this is the belief, you cannot exclude bacteria, viruses, amoebas. You cannot exclude any form of life. And spiritualists, not referencing the spiritualist movement, but spiritualists seek to separate matter from spiritual. So we get this duality because they have taken the one nature and they have separated it. So they've separated matter from spiritual, or matter from mind, refusing to consider matter and spirit as a unity because they don't teach that we are a unity. They teach that we are physical beings with a soul entombed within us, which in all actuality is incorrect. Again, referencing the earlier theories of the black hole and the white hole. So With this in mind, if what we call the spirit realm is merely a continuation of the material realm, which is merely a continuation of the spirit realm, okay, these are merely points, and we would move through these points continuously. We are born into what we call the physical realm, and then we are spewed out of the physical realm into the spiritual realm. We exist in the spirit realm, and then we are spewed out of the spirit realm and back into the physical realm. So there is a continuous cycle going on here. And we have to keep this in mind. Nature operates in a cycle. Everything that you have experienced up to this point is a repetition of earlier experiences. Merely, the only thing that is different is your perspective of them. So they also tell us that dualism, which cannot ultimately satisfy the separation of spirit and matter, I just demonstrated that, comes to rest in an opposite conception in which dualism appears only on a closer examination to disappear. We just demonstrated that. The theories that we touched on earlier demonstrated that. And the result is monism, or the one principle theory. Thus, dualism can only be used as a means of explanation. Matter and spirit, the realm of material and the immaterial realm, they are merely divisions used for explanation, but they are not truly divided. Never have been, never can be. They are expressions of two parts of the whole. It's always a whole. You are neither a soul within a body or a body that encases a soul. You are one and the other. You are the soul. The body is a creation of the soul, and the soul can easily be a creation of the body. A whole. So, monism is a one principle theory that cannot sufficiently explain the whole without considering its potential parts or aspects, meaning that the whole, or you, cannot be sufficiently explained as being whole without considering personality, soul, beliefs, cultural influence. You see, you have all of that tied into that makes you what you are. So unity or wholeness cannot be explained without considering what makes up the whole. That is the idea here. So if we insist upon a spiritual aspect and a material aspect, we must also consider the true meaning of spiritual, which is life, which is continuous, pervasive life. The thing in itself being matter, the nature of which is unknowable, implied in a belief in the limitations of the human faculty and knowledge. That is what we are taught. We are taught we have limitations. We are in this body, therefore, we are limited to what this body can do. And when we are in spirit, we are limited by what the spirit body can do, which is incorrect. We're limited by our thinking and our perception and our beliefs. We limit ourselves. However, a lot of people perceive this to be some challenge that limitations are to be ignored. No, 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 no. It's not that you learn your limitations and then ignore them. It's that you learn your limitations and understand them. And as you understand the limitations, the limitation becomes something else. And then there is another limitation. We are limited by our thinking and beliefs. Wishful thinking is what gets us into trouble. I have a cognitive disability. And when I begin to experience signs of that disability acting or inaction, I can, one, ignore those signs and create havoc around me, or I can understand that limitation and moderate what I do through that limitation, allowing me not to go out and create chaos. One way I can create chaos when my disability is active is to get in my vehicle and go for a drive. That would be careless of me to do that. However, if I notice these signs that are coming up and understand my limitations, I know that I cannot drive, but I can walk. I know that there are certain things that I should not do. I could do, but I should not do, because the likelihood of creating more problems for myself increases because I have ignored the limitation. You see what I'm getting at here? It's not that you know your limitations and ignore them. It's that you learn of your limitations and learn to utilize them, move through them, use them to continue to move forward. And this is all a matter of interpretation. So I want to thank you for attending to this. I hope I didn't confuse you, but this is a very good demonstration that shows how spiritual teachings, spiritual understanding can be explained through science, a scientific perspective. The two are related. Now, religion is something altogether different, because religion follows a doctrine. It follows rules that in most instances deters or discourages any kind of growth. Look at life before the Renaissance period, where you have philosophers and scientists. Science was a philosophy at the time, where these people were oppressed by the prevailing religion. There is the principle of gravity, or the principle that it is the earth that moves around the sun and not the sun that moves around the earth. Those people who made those discoveries, who realized those things, were oppressed. So religion does not necessarily have room for science. However, your interpretation of religion may allow science to come into it and play a role in proving or disproving religious doctrine. But we get into that belief system, and we're not discussing that. So I want to thank you for your attention. If this was useful, of value, insightful, take a moment and like the video, consider subscribing. There are other videos, there are other presentations that I have available that explore different spiritual concepts. And these are only explorations. There's nothing in here that you must believe or must consider. This is merely a presentation of different perspectives on a lot of age-old ideas. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.